Welcome to today's panels on digital trust, and I want to thank and welcome my fellow panelists as well today on an important topic on digital trust, especially for SMEs and MSMEs. So how do you prove your identity? So as a person, I may have a government-issued ID in my wallet, maybe even on my phone. And that engenders trust. You know that I'm a person. You know that this has been validated. However, there are 850 million people that do not have any official ID, according to the World Bank. So how do they build trust, and how do they build and validate their authenticity to others? Now, what if some of these people were also the 350 million people, micro, small, and medium enterprises, MSMEs, that exist across the world? How do you prove a business identity? So this is especially important in accessing finance, in accessing business services, for a business to prove, for a business to build upon this trust. Now, there are standards that are coming up, like for building a business digital identity. These include the World Wide Web Consortium Verified Credentials Data Model. This also includes the Universal Trusted Credentials supported by the Bank of Ghana, as well as the Monetary Authority of Singapore as well. So in today's session, we're going to discuss a little bit more about digital identity and its potential for really unlocking not only trust, but the trust that then affects financing, the trust that accelerates investment as well as sustainability. So I wanted to begin and looking at kind of the current state of business identities. And taking a further look at that, I want to turn first to Dr. Maxwell of the Bank of Ghana. So Ghana's small and medium enterprises, or SMEs, make up about 92% of its companies, according to your Registrar General. So why is digital trust important for these companies, and what issues arise from this lack of digital trust?
Thank you very much, Amy, and good afternoon to all of us. Good to be back to the SFF this year. Digital trust is very important, and as you said, based on the World Bank study, 850 million people do not have access to any kind of identity that will open doors for them. Let's go straight to your question. In terms of Ghana, about 92% of businesses in Ghana are SMEs or MSMEs. Not just that, they make up 80% of total employment in Ghana. And in addition to that, they contribute about 60% to our GDP. So you can clearly see that this is the binding constraint to growth and poverty reduction if Ghana is supposed to make any impact at all. That's where the focus should be. If we're able to focus on MSMEs and SMEs that make up 60% of our GDP, we will be very transformational and impactful and be able to reduce poverty. But these are the ones that are mostly affected by trust issues. In fact, one of the key challenges SMEs and MSMEs face in Ghana is that perception of trust. And so the engagement with the financial institutions is coming from a place of a trust deficit. And with that trust deficit, it impacts the assessment and the eligibility and access to credit. And at the same time, they also tend to be a bit more informal. And if they are informal, then how do we then help them to address these trust issues, which also makes access to finance a bigger issue? Let's look at the statistics I gave. 90, 80, 60. Huge. But this is happening at a time where they faced one of the hugest or largest financing gap. $4.8 billion in a year. Financing gap for MSMEs in Ghana. So if we're able to address the trust issues that also are impacts on their access to finance issues, that would be extremely impactful for promoting or inclusive growth in Ghana. And that's where we think that the binding constraint is, and that's where we think that digital trust will be the way to leapfrog instead of going through the other forms of identification that the big companies and the big institutions have. We can use digitalization to leapfrog and get the MSMEs and the SMEs in Ghana to establish some trusted, verifiable trusted credentials. And this is coming out of their digital footprints. This is coming out of their engagements on digitalization, the footprints that they leave together. How can we put all this together to be able to establish some form of verifiable, trusted digital credentials that we can use to bridge the trust gap? And that's why we teamed up with Monetary Authorities of Singapore and UNDP to form the Universal Trusted Credentials, which maybe we can discuss a bit more down the line. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Dr. Maxwell. I think you just brought up a very interesting term, trust deficit, and how trusted credentials of some kind, like one implemented in Ghana as well, actually help to address that. So, and the numbers are staggering, just in Ghana alone, in terms of the economic and employment impact. I want to turn to another central bank now, looking to Jose Manuel of the Banco de España. In Spain, SMEs make up also a staggering 99% of all businesses. So we were talking about large numbers, and that's even larger. So Spain also works closely with Latin American counterparts. So can you tell me, what are the most pressing issues related to digital trust, growth for SMEs in Spain, and related to Latin America as well? And what are some of the distinctions in these issues?
Okay, thanks, Amy, for the question, and thanks for organizing this panel, because I think that this is a very critical issue in the digital world. In the case of Spain, of course, the SMEs is particularly important. That is our firm's space is basically SMEs, and we have big firms, but SMEs are very, very, very important. And the perception is for them digitalization is critical, but they are not they are not very concerned about the access to finance because of digitalization. This is not the main concern. The surveys that we develop in the Bank of Spain or the one developed at the European level show that only 13 or 14% of the firms have some concern about access to financing, but they think that the digitalization is very important in order to attract new customers and to be able to compete and to scale. Then one of the issues that is the fact that this is not important is because they have a proper identification process. Another initiative that we have in Spain that has been particularly useful, and I will link with the concerns of Latin America also, is that once that you access to the financial system and you obtain some funding, some SMEs from the financial system, you are able to request all the credit information, all the debt history, all the payments that you made, if you have made some delay on the payments. And the access to this information is particularly helpful for the SMEs in order to obtain funding for other sources different from banks. Then in order to increase competition, this is a particularly useful way. And the third issue I just want to raise is that it's not only to have identification, but also how to manage your personal identity as a company. That is how to manage your presence in the social media, in the media, in the social networks. And this is important because most of the fintechs and most of the alternatives way of funding are using this kind of information. This comparing with what is happening in Latin America, we see that in some countries the identification is an important problem, and initiatives like the one that you mentioned before could be particularly important in order to promote the access of firms to new source of funding. Many countries ask us about the experience with this credit register and the possibility to share the information, because one of the phenomena they are seeing is the important increase of new ways of providing funding able to compete with the banks. And then for doing that, these firms need their information about the track records in the credit register, and also the possibility of using this social media information is particularly useful for them.
Thank you, Jose Manuel. I think you brought up some interesting issues, so that it involves not only traditional financial institutions, but fintechs are increasingly playing a larger role, and possibly as well in utilizing or referencing alternate data when looking at building digital trust, which I think is one of the aspects that Dr. Maxwell will bring up later in terms of looking at different types of data. But turning back now into actually the use of the types of IDs and the current use cases for digital trust for businesses. I want to turn back to Dr. Maxwell to kind of start again from this current state. When we're looking at the implementation of digital IDs in Ghana, specifically the UTC and the central bank and government's use cases, can you detail a little bit more about what has been implemented before? You referenced it a bit in the beginning. Why don't you expand upon that?
Thank you very much, Amy. In my earlier point, I talked about the UTC, which is the form of the verifiable trusted credentials that we call the Universal Trusted Credentials. This is what we piloted in Ghana. But for us to be able to roll out the UTC, the government of Ghana had already put in place certain key infrastructure that allowed us to be able to use the UTC. And the first one of that is the introduction of the Ghana card, which is the biometric unique identifier Ghana identity card, which has brought together every single Ghana. At the moment, we have close to 20 million Ghanaians who have the unified biometric identity card. That biometric identity card gives unified identification. What is also interesting about that is that one of the biggest problems that MSMEs have faced in Ghana is the siloed nature of databases scattered all over the place. But with the introduction of the Ghana card, we're able to link the Ghana card to the Revenue Authority database, which is the unique tax identification number. We're able to link it to the Drivers and Vehicle License Authority database. We're able to link it to the Social Security database. We're able to link it to the National Health Insurance database. We're able to link it to so many other databases that are scattered all over the place, bringing it together, making it a single point of identification for Ghanaians. And then the biometric Ghana card sits on top of that. That created the unique infrastructure for the central bank and the monetary authorities of Singapore and UNDP to be able to pilot the Universal Trusted Credentials, in the sense that all your footprints, digital footprints, and all these databases were also digitalized. So all your digital footprints across all these different databases are set up under one identity on your Ghana card. So once you have one Ghana card number, we'll be able to access all these databases. And so we're able to pull all your unique identification. In fact, I forgot about one of them. One of the basic challenges we had is tracing. Banks had difficulty in tracing their clients and their customers. When you give loans, housing and street numbers were extremely difficult in Ghana. Not all of them were numbered properly. So it was difficult to trace where these entities are or where these individuals are. The government of Ghana also introduced the digital address system, where in Ghana, every 5-meter radius has a unique digital address. And that became the game changer, allowed every single entity, household, individual to have a digital address that is also linked to the biometric Ghana card. So with that infrastructure set up already, then we're able to then use the digital footprints to calibrate a credential that establishes the intent to pay and the willingness to pay and the ability to pay. So once we're able to pull these footprints, we're able to use your digital behavior or your behavior on different digital spaces to establish your willingness to pay, your intent to pay, It also captures, if it's linked to the revenue authority, it captures how frequently you're able to file your taxes, whether you are paying your taxes on time. That gives a sense of a behavior that signals your intent and your ability to pay. And once we're able to do that, we establish what you call the UTs, the Ghana Infrastructure of Finance Ecosystem, where Ghana Integrated Finance Ecosystem, called the GIFI, working together with monetary authorities of Singapore, and we introduced that in a sandbox environment at the central bank. And based on that, the participating banks and the participating SMEs and the MSMEs and the underwriter are able to then give out loans to MSMEs under the sandbox using their UTC without any tangible collateral. And SMEs are then able to close that trust deficit I talked about, are able to access loans under the sandbox without any tangible collateral, and it's been operating for close to a year now, and the MPL under this sandbox is less than 1%, whereas the average MPLs for the traditional banks is around 15%. So that should tell you how important and transformational this is going to be for MSMEs as we begin to open it up and bring on more financial institutions, vote a lot more money into the sandbox and take it out of the sandbox and roll it out more universally to reach out to more SMEs in Ghana. So this is what we've done with monetary authorities of Singapore. This is what we've introduced in Ghana. And just before we came here, the Bank of Ghana has approved to expand that sandbox environment to bring in more financial institutions so that we'll be able to reach out to more MSMEs and SMEs in Ghana by giving them access to finance without tangible collateral, which has become the biggest challenge that SMEs face in Ghana. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Maxwell. So I think we heard some really interesting parts of how Ghana has really embraced technology and innovation from a personal sense, from the biometric universal IDs for Ghanaians, and then translating to business, having that ease of information flow and collection from different agencies. So that's one point that I'd like to dive a little bit deeper on. So the technology behind this and really looking at this. So I want to turn to Jacinta. From a technology kind of infrastructure and provider perspective, so you have worked in terms of implementing this type of environment to collect and integrate data as well. So can you tell me now, in implementing this, what are some of the lessons learned in how the digital ID was supported? And how do you think that it can continue to evolve now that you've kind of rolled out in kind of the first stage? What's that subsequent stage?
Thank you, Amy, and good afternoon, everyone. So before I address your question, I'm sure everybody knows the central banks, but I just want to introduce Proxtera for the benefit of the audience. So we are actually a fintech company, and we were set up by the Monetary Authority of Singapore and IMDA to run this initiative called the Business Send Borders. So our mission is really about enabling B2B cross-border trade and financing for SMEs. So all our solutions is about how we can help SMEs, allow them to gain more access to markets and to get more financing to grow their business. Yeah. So we have been embarking on this journey in Ghana, and as Dr. Maxwell has mentioned, the Ghana Integrated Financial Ecosystem program that we are running. So Proxtera, basically, we are the fintech company that built the digital infrastructure for the whole program. Yeah. So we are really taking the SME through a journey, and through this journey, we are credentializing their profiles, because, like what Dr. Maxwell mentioned, trust is really a big factor. It's essential for trade to happen and for financing to happen. So And what exactly is trusted credentials? So it's about the validation of the data. So, and really thanks to the works that the regulators, Bank of Ghana, has been doing, the data sources are there. So data is there. But how do you credentialize it? So really it's about collection of data, and we are connected through APIs to the data source to validate this information and credentializing them. And why is that important? And why is it that there is actually a white paper on Universal Trusted Credential? It's about standardization, right? It's about data symmetry. And I think what's really key is that also it must be accepted by services provider. So you can create a credential, but if it's not being accepted, because SMEs, they don't care about this whole process about, technology and all. To them, it's how can this help me? At the end of the day, if I go through this journey and and I'm able to get my business profile in a way that, yes, I cannot be tampered with it, but what's next? Am I able to get financing after? So the success that we have done in Ghana has proven that it works, that with the UTC, banks are willing. So we have a pilot bank, just shout out to Consolidated Bank of Ghana, who is the pilot bank for our project. So they managed to disburse 8 million CDs of loans. So this is not just a concept, it's already being done, it's proven, and as Dr. Maxwell mentioned, less than 1% in terms of NPLs. But another area that I want to mention is also about data integrity. Actually, through this whole process, we're also cleaning up the data. Yeah. So it's a dual process in terms of like we collecting data, validating with the data source, and after which we can also clean up what's already in there. So that's about data integrity. But this process is also not without challenge. So just something to mention is that although when we looked at the numbers of digital adoption, say in Ghana, especially developing countries, it's more than 60%. But actually, it's not a very accurate representation about about the capabilities of SMEs when it comes to being digital. So a lot of hand-holding still needs to take place to get them through this journey. And it's always a two-way thing. Banks will say that, SMEs, I don't have the data and all, and then SMEs will be blaming the banks that the liquidity is there, but I'm not obtaining. So it's really a two-way thing and really bridging that gap. Really about change of behavior. SMEs needs to also realize that by going through this process, it benefits them and there's a value behind it. So I'll just end here. Thank you.
Thank you very much. And I think that gives a bit more color into the actual implementation and how data is so important, and having the right data and coming into the system actually helps build that better profile at the end. So we've heard about Ghana and an example. We've heard about Spain and a bit about Latin America as well. So I want to turn now to Eastern Africa. I want to turn to Rwanda. So we have Dr. Diane Krusi. So you lead the largest retail bank in Rwanda. So can you tell us a little bit about how Bank of Kigali has utilized digitalization to enable services for those SMEs that need it most?
Thank you, and thank you for having me on this very exciting panel. So as everyone says, people leave a digital footprint, whatever they do. In Rwanda, we have the unique identification. It's biometric ID for everyone. Everyone above the age of 16 has that ID. And there's a lot that we can do with that. And we have a sister company called BK Tech House that has built a number of platforms. One for farmers, where farmers, for example, can order for their seeds, for their fertilizers, and this leaves a digital footprint because this farmer located in this place in the country has ordered for this much fertilizers, etc. The same company also has a payment gateway that is universal. And through that payment gateway, people pay for the local taxes, because in every community, people pay for cleaning, for security. So this also leaves a digital footprint. So we are able, when you have the ID of a person, you're actually even able to see how much these people contribute at church, because the same payment gateway is used for people to contribute at church. So this gives a lot of data points that can be used at the bank to be able to facilitate people, to qualify them for loans, to see their behavior online, to see how much they're paying, how often they're paying, if they're paying on time, etc. So this is very, very powerful. So what we are also doing, and what I believe is important, is to give people access to these services. And it's my first time at SFF, and I've seen a lot happening. I saw these AI assistants. We don't have that yet, but we have in all the communities, we have thousands of banking agents. So these are small businesses across the country. We have more than 4,000 of these agents who are banking agents. So they help us in providing services to our clients. So they're closer to communities. They know the people in the community. And at the beginning, they were only helping us to do cash in, cash out, someone who wants money out or wants to put money on the account. This was the basic service. But now, they're helping us to onboard clients, so people can open accounts. And we want to grow the journey to make sure people can go to an agent and apply for a loan. Because the agent typically has a laptop or a smartphone, has access to internet, which most of our clients don't have. So they still use a feature phone with very, very limited features, and it's very difficult. The experience for them to access services is quite difficult. So this agent is now going to be able to use all these data points that the people have left online and be able to help us qualify a person for a loan that we can disperse on a mobile wallet or on an account. And we believe the journey, of course, is continuing, and it's extremely exciting to see what can happen when you're able to connect all the data points that people have left online, and you're able to look at their behavior online, what works, what doesn't work. And we've seen this happening a lot for women in business. We call these businesses household enterprises, because these are owned by a household and most times actually led by a woman. And the woman is identified by the ID. So you're able to trace that woman's behavior online, and you're able to qualify these women for small loans. Most of them do trade, cross-border trades for some of them, some buying fruits and vegetables in the morning, selling them in the market, etc. And you're able to qualify these women for small loans, uncollateralized because of all the data points that you have. And they're able to grow small businesses gradually. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Deanne. So it's interesting to see that with BK Tech House and your payment gateway as well, it really becomes this integrated gateway to a host of different services. And what it also helps do for the person utilizing it is that it breeds this familiarity, right? If you use it for one service, then you'll be okay kind of logging in, being able to use it for another service. And then it just becomes habit, it becomes easier. And so any type of the digital kind of fear that may come in, especially as you mentioned, if they may not necessarily have laptops or smartphones to access the whole suite of services, it kind of reduces that friction to have these agents, but to have the familiarity as well. So thank you for sharing that. So we're gonna now transition to forward-looking cases. So we've talked about access to financing, how the UTC has really become an enabler to serve as that verified credential in order to help someone access financing. So now, kind of looking forward, what are some additional use cases? And I think I'll turn back to actually Jacinta to start as well for this. You've helped, especially Bank of Ghana in your example, kind of enable SMEs to be able to have access to kind of preferred types of financing products. What are some extensions that you could see for the use cases here? Do you think that there are sustainability types of use cases? What are some other pressing use cases that you could see in the platform?
Thanks, Amy. So I would really want to touch on trade, because like 90% of businesses are SMEs, but when you look at trade numbers, they're not there. And market access is actually a very big key for SMEs. So they might be able to get financing just in country, but for them to really go cross-border, there's still a lot of challenges, and actually it still boils down to trust. So if I'm a Singapore entity and I want to say trade with an SME in Ghana, how do I know that it's a legit business, it's a registered business? How do I know that that business actually really exists? So this is where UTC, your trusted credentials, comes in. Through this framework and through a digital platform, a trade platform that we have, all SMEs that's onboarded, they are already validated through government sources. And this creates that trust for trade to take place. Yeah. And when it comes to the trusted credentials, there's actually four levels. So the first level, it's the just KYB, company information. The second one is on transactions. Thirdly, on financial information, whether they're in good standing in terms of credit. And then the fourth is on ESG credentials. Yeah. So also through the platform, as the data is being captured, as the SME actually do trades. And these are also very important data, because these data can be shared with, say, banks for them to obtain trade financing to be able to do the trade transaction. That's one. I think in future, one area that SME will have to also, it's just a sooner or later thing, is to take note on ESG reporting. So there will be big companies who will require SMEs to be able to provide information about how sustainable is their business and all. So that will be an area that really we see it that it will be a very key for SME to be sustainable. Yeah, I just said thank you.
Thank you, and I think it's good to know that the sustainability part, as you mentioned, is one of the levels of types of information. So actually, it can be collected along the way. It can already be kind of part and parcel of what you're looking at and incorporating into this profile and into validating identity. So I want to turn now to Jose Manuel. It's a similar question, actually, for all the panelists as we look into kind of the future applications of this. So what are the key aspects of this digital identity and extensions that you think would be important for both for Spain and in your work with Latin America as well?
Sorry?
What are some important aspects of this digital identity in terms of future use cases? I think sustainability was mentioned, possibly investments that would be important for SMEs to access as part of a digital identity.
Okay, looking at the future, I think that mainly from the European perspective, we are currently now in an ambitious project of revising the digital identity across the European countries. That is basically, we already have some identity wallets, both for citizens and for firms, but this is basically accepted only for public services and has not a lot of interoperability cross-border. Then our main challenge is to create, and the idea is to have this ready or implemented in the next year, to create a framework that has like two pillars. One is that is accepted everywhere in Europe and for all the use cases, that is for public and also for private. And at the same time, that the the citizens and the firms can control what they can introduce in this identity. That is this concept of sovereignty identity, that you didn't have to share all the information that is required, that you can manage what you put in the information. Then, in order to do that, basically, we are already conducting some projects, like 4 projects during the last 2 years, that includes like 250 companies, and these projects cover several use cases from fintech, from finance, but also in the health sphere, also in the educational sphere. That is, there are several areas in order to see the difficulties in implementing this one, and the idea is to spread this one and to have at least some standards that could increase this competence, these cross-border activities. That is where we have now the main challenge in Europe. Then this is the main idea, and of course that is part of the information that I share that most of the companies will like to share is all this one related with climate change and or related with the climate footprint of the companies. This, I think that we are improving a lot about the standards and the possibility to introduce this information in your identity or the credential that you obtain in some certification in your identity and to be recognized is one important aspect in order for the customers to take value about this advance and this cost that you are investing in being sustainable.
Thank you, Jose Manuel. I think you brought up a very important point that it's a constant process. It's a constant process of improvement and revision, but then interoperability is key. So not that the information is verified and validated and accepted by your country, but you are able to help, especially SMEs, take this validated information and say, yes, now actually because it's been validated here, we can operate between Spain and Rwanda, between Rwanda and Ghana. Like we can have this because we have this trust and we can now bring this trust cross-border. I am going to kind of wrap up with 2 questions, actually, from audience kind of preferences. One is for Dr. Diane. So how is Rwanda addressing the challenges of investment and financing for MSMEs? So can you speak to that from your stance from Bank of Kigali?
So I think most banks have understood the importance of supporting SMEs, and all banks have a dedicated department for SMEs. And of course, at the bank level, we do debt financing. So what we are still missing is other forms of financing, private equity, venture capital, etc., to finance SMEs. But at the level of the banks, I think we've understood the SME portfolio grows by over 20% year on year in the past couple of years. And the way we do it, we do it, of course, working capital financing is the easiest thing to do. But you also look at supply chain financing. We are seeing more and more, because of the digital footprint of companies, etc., and people, we are being able to form ecosystems and where you really understand how money is flowing. So I'll give you an example. In Rwanda, for people to take public transport, it's completely cashless. You have a card and you tap for you to move from point A to point B. So this is a dish of, this is data that is left by everyone who's traveling in the city, Kigali, but also people who are traveling up country. So this enables us as banks to see which bus companies have the most clients, because you can see this in real time. We are able to do vehicle finance for these transport companies. Within our group, we also have an insurance company. So we are able to do insurance for these bus companies. We are also able to finance garages because we know these companies are going to go for maintenance, etc. So this discussion around the digital trust is really helping us to design and build ecosystems that we can grow over time, because we see how money is flowing from the consumers all the way to the company and eventually even the regulators, etc. So we believe that this is also enabling a lot more financing go into this ecosystem without necessarily requiring additional collateral, because you have the data and you can see how money is flowing from users to companies, etc. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Dr. Diane. And so I think it's really interesting to see the different facets of kind of everyday life, including just taking public transportation, that can be cashless, but actually is a form of data collection in terms of point A to point B, the type of person you can, if there's a registration on the card, you can see more additional information about the person. So you can see that there's actually many facets where you can collect data and alternative forms of data to collect this and form this digital identity of both a person and as well as a business or SME or MSE. I know that we're running short on time, so I want to thank my panelists today for contributing on this conversation on digital trust for SMEs and MSMEs. I think we saw that it's key to understand what are the types of data sources that we can connect to in our countries, what are these validated and authentic sources that are available. It's important to look ahead as well to see, once we've done that, how can we interoperate with our key partners and other partners that we may want to kind of grow and do cross-border business with. Similar to kind of the partnership with the Monetary Authority of Singapore and the Bank of Ghana, are there partnerships that we can form, not just at the central bank level, but among key financial institutions as well, to try to grow SMEs and SMEs and MSMEs on both sides, bilaterally and multilaterally. So thank you everyone for joining in this conversation today, and have a good rest of the day at Singapore FinTech Fest.